Hi, I'm Dr. Eleanor Glenn, Co-Director of Common Cause Australia. For the Victorian Department of Health, I've been working with our research partners to develop messages that motivate people to get vaccinated against COVID-19. So it's really important and exciting work, and right now I'd like to share our recommendations with you. Before I dive in, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our research. So first, we did a literature review, not only looking at vaccination recommendations, but specifically on COVID vaccinations. We also looked at what experts were saying on the issue, doctors, chief medical officers and so on, and got some useful messages from both of those, which we then took into focus groups. And also then pulling together all those promising messages to test in a quantitative message testing survey. So that was with more than 1,500 people. And from all of the above, we pulled together a message guide with our 5 top tips that I'll share with you in a moment. We also did some work to develop a conversation guide for GPs based on Conversations Lit Review and some conversation tips for the rest of us to have conversations with our friends, families and work colleagues. So in summary, some great news. Most people want to get vaccinated and most have already got vaccinated. We know what works from the research. We keep seeing time and again the same sorts of effective messages and strategies, and there's some great case studies out there already. There are 2 scenarios in which our messages are heard, and they each need a different core message. So in an outbreak, we focus on personal agency to get back to the things we love. It's the thing we can do to help end the outbreaks and lockdowns and get back to doing the things we love with people we love. At other times, we focus on care because that getting back to doing the things we love isn't so relevant if we're already doing those things. So we get vaccinated because that's how we care for our loved ones and keep everyone in our community well. Vaccination makes it hard for the virus to spread. So here's our 5 tips. The first one is to lead with love and care values, not facts. We want to emphasise the benefits to our loved ones and our whole community, such as in this message. When enough people get vaccinated, we have immunity from COVID as a whole community, which helps keep our loved ones safe. And it looks and feels like this. So it's a shot from a Canadian campaign. This is our shot to be together again. Because people do primarily make decisions at speed on the basis of values, emotions and identity, facts are less influential than we might imagine. What we really want to do is avoid risk framing. So avoid pairing vaccination with risk, injury and death in these types of messages that you could call, how would you rather die? So the risks of the vaccine are less than the risks of serious illness or death from COVID. The risks of getting blood clots from the AstraZeneca vaccine is only 1 in 200,000. The risk of dying from the vaccine is much less than the risk of dying while driving a car. And visually, these types of things. But unfortunately, even though these statements are true, what they're doing each time is pairing together the idea of when you hear vaccination, you're also remembering, thinking of things like on this graph, drowning, homicide, car accident, risk and death. Instead, and this is tip 2, we want to paint a positive picture of a post-vaccination world. So it's about emphasising the benefits rather than the risks. We want to avoid choice and freedom. Unfortunately, those words have been co-opted by people promoting anti-vaccination and anti-lockdown. It's not helpful to say vaccination gives us freedom or Freedom Day, because also not having any lockdowns also gives us freedom. It's not a useful thing in this situation to emphasise choice and freedom. Choice just leads us to individualistic ways of thinking about vaccination rather than collective. But on the right hand side, moving to, we can get across similar ideas just using different words. So vaccination allows us to move on from the pandemic. It allows us to do those things we love. Vaccination gives us peace of mind when visiting family and friends. The other thing we know is that the actual act of getting vaccinated is not very reassuring and motivating to people. So we want to avoid showing these images of needles and getting jabbed. And instead we can show how great it feels, like the picture on the left, to have had your vaccination and done your part for your community, or on the right, knowing that we can soon get back to the good things. Tip 3, tell stories of transformation from hesitancy to vaccination. So we want to normalise moving from feeling hesitant to getting vaccinated, especially through personal stories. Access is critical for people to be able to make this move, so we want to give really clear information about where, when and how to get vaccinated. At the same time though, we want to avoid pushiness. So we saw, especially in the focus groups, that once it feels as though government is pushing us to get vaccinated, most people resent that. So instead we use how-to messages. So when we say this is how to get vaccinated, it usefully assumes that we do want to, and it gives us those clear directions to make getting vaccinated easy. There's a couple of examples on the right, the things we want to say. Here's how to get your vaccination. Let's get ready. So we know in the future borders are going to open. Let's get ready. Tip 4, build on existing trust in healthcare workers. So if you are talking with people who do have concerns about risks or side effects, the best message is speak to your doctor who cares about you and knows your health history. So rather than suggesting on the left it's normal for medical advice to change over time, which doesn't reassure people, we want to flip that on the right-hand side. Healthcare workers really care about us. That's why they're monitoring vaccinations all the time, making sure they always have the best information to give us. So in a way, it's a similar story about, yes, it changes, but it's really coming from that place of because healthcare workers care for us. They're constantly monitoring. Tip 5, tell our story, not theirs. So here's some examples from the Commonwealth Is It True website, where COVID-19 vaccines developed too quickly to be safe. So just think for a moment what that's suggesting to you. Can COVID-19 vaccines give you COVID-19? So even though if you click on there, you'll see the details that no, it can't, and there'll be an explanation there. It is upfront suggesting, planting that idea or reminding you of the misinformation that it can give you COVID-19. Can COVID-19 vaccines alter my DNA? I'd never heard of that one, but now I know that some people are worried about that. There's something going on about DNA, and again about DNA. Is the vaccine roll out a cover to collect DNA, or does the Astra vaccine contain animal DNA? So it's really suggesting there's something going on here. People have concerns about DNA. Do COVID-19 vaccines cause infertility? So if I see that, even though if they go and debunk it, if I wanted to become pregnant and I saw that, then that's going to stick in my memory, this association of the vaccine and causing infertility. So all of these are their story. We don't want to go there. They're not useful things to either remind people of if they've heard them before, or to plant those seeds in people's minds. So we want to avoid myth busting. What we do instead is we repeat our story, so it's the most familiar and easily recalled for people. I know it's hard, but we want to ignore active resistors and their myths and conspiracies. We don't want to give them airtime or myth bust their story. And if someone suggests an unhelpful story to you, perhaps the media will put an unhelpful story to you, you can pivot away from that by saying, to me, the important thing is then tell our story. So credit where it's due, here's a recent Commonwealth fact sheet developed with First Nations advisors, where instead of putting the myth and then busting it, they actually put the fact, the thing that they want you to think about, front and centre. Yes, very fact-based, which is fine, but underneath they also usefully bring out those love and care values. So for example, they're please think about getting the COVID-19 vaccine to protect yourself, your family, elders and others in your community. So definitely telling our helpful story that motivates people to get vaccinated and avoiding the unhelpful misinformation or scaremongering stories. We can apply these 5 messaging tips in our central communications, like on websites and flyers, and also in our conversations with people. Conversations are about connecting, not correcting. And also 3 things matter here: the messenger, the way you start the conversation, and your tone. So we know that people like me in our in-groups have a lot of influence on us and our decisions. So if you're already having conversations with your friends and family and colleagues, that's fantastic. Also, if you're in organisations where you work with various communities, you can encourage them to also have conversations with their friends and family. Maybe also you could host an event where people from those communities can talk to each other about getting vaccinated, if that's something they're comfortable with. When you're starting a conversation with someone, you want to assume that they want to get vaccinated. So this is our track 1, the start of the conversation. You could start it with various ways of basically saying, here's how to get vaccinated. So for example, did you know that X local pharmacy is now giving vaccination? That might lead someone to either getting vaccinated, or you might get a response, I'm not sure about that, I have some questions. If you hear that, you move straight to track 2, which is about listening and building trust, which might again lead to them getting vaccinated, or maybe they'll think about doing that later. But you want to keep that open. So this is really the idea behind your tone matters. You want to listen and be open to everyone's personal experience. So this is really asking them, and then before you tell, so telling about your personal experience. So your task overall is to ask questions, listen with empathy, thank them for raising their concerns, and share your story and experiences as well as facts where needed. I'd suggest that this is a long game where trust is everything. So you want to think of the goal of your conversation as building trust and 2-way understanding. Meaning you want to hear from the person you're speaking with about what they think, what their experiences have been, but also you want them to understand, well, for me, I had some concerns, I spoke to my doctor, I decided to get vaccinated. Or I still have concerns, but I got vaccinated. I wanted to do it for my family, my community, and not worry so much about passing on COVID. You want to make your conversation partner feel good and open to vaccination. And just know it might happen soon, not right now. That's okay. You want to avoid having an argument where someone gets defensive and you're basically shutting off that openness to getting vaccinated. You might hear things like, I'm not sure vaccinations are safe, or I'm worried about blood clots. And you might respond with things like, if you have any questions about getting vaccinated, talk to your doctor who cares about you and your health and can give you the best advice. Or, this is the personal story, I wasn't sure at first either, but after speaking to my doctor, I decided to go ahead and get vaccinated. You might also hear something like, if you're vaccinated, why does it matter whether I'm vaccinated or not? Or everyone should be able to choose whether or not they get vaccinated. So you might respond with this very simple idea that the more people get vaccinated, the less COVID can spread. Or when everyone who can get vaccinated does, we get immunity as a whole community and can get back to doing the things we love. And we also know from the focus groups that the equity and social justice idea is a strong one. So you could go with this message: some people can't get vaccinated. They are relying on us getting vaccinated. You might hear, I don't want to put a new drug in my body. And you could respond, the health workers who developed the vaccine really care about our health. That's why they are constantly monitoring vaccinations. Or the vaccine works by training our own immune system to fight COVID. Then it leaves the body completely and we're powered up in case we're exposed to the virus. You may also hear, what's the point of getting vaccinated when you can still get sick and pass on COVID? And you could respond, with the vaccine, we massively cut down the chance of getting really sick or spreading COVID to others. It's the best way of protecting ourselves and others. So there you have it, 2 core scenarios, each with a core message, 5 messaging tips, conversation tips where you can also put those messaging tips into practice, as well as remembering that the messenger matters, your start matters, and your tone matters. So I hope that's really helpful to you. Get in touch, we'd love to hear how you go putting this into practice.